Hello, welcome to Boilers Extra. I'm Nathan Baird from the IndyStar.
Sam King from the Journal and Courier.
Just wrapped up Purdue's season opening victory, a 31-0 win over Ball State. Pretty comfortable day right from the start. Fast start, something that obviously Purdue fans were not used to last year. So that's the first big change of the Barry Odom era, was jumping out in front of somebody and then kind of riding that off and controlling the game. And the performance, I think, by the defense that we were, I don't know if you'd say expecting, but nothing shocked me that, they were able to stifle what I don't think is a very good Ball State team, and especially a very good Ball State offense, but laying the foundation potentially for more success later this season.
Yeah, very much so. And Barry Odom alluded to this because I thought over the course of the game, the defense got a little, I don't want to say lackadaisical, but clearly it came out hot, started out very well, and the offense too. It didn't kind of carry over, and it would be crazy to think that Purdue would keep up that pace the way it started the game. The Boilermakers had 2 touchdowns in 9 plays after not scoring against an FBS team in the first quarter all of last season. But there were a couple missed field goals, but he kept Ball State out of the end zone. Took away, things they wanted to do. Really had one big explosive play the entire game. Looked like it was going to be a touchdown. And Crew Wakely chased Elijah Jackson, a former Purdue running back, down from behind, and ended up forcing a field goal on that drive that was ultimately missed. But the 0 on the scoreboard is huge. Whether or not came as a result of missed field goals, that's a big confidence builder. And you're right, the way that Purdue came out and just from the get-go looked like it was the better team and wasn't going to let Ball State hang around and have chances in the second half, I thought was big for this program.
And listen, they opened last season with a shutout against an undermanned opponent also, and we know what happened after that. So again, I think this is more about getting started, and then what can you carry forward? What can they build on? I think this is a better indication just because it's a team at a higher level of football than what Indiana State was. But I did also see the things that we talked about or that we saw in the preseason. A lot of it carried forward into this game. We'll start on defense. Like, I started charting or keeping track of just the substitutions. That's a pretty normal thing that we'll try to do during games. But I thought it was especially important for the start of this season, especially since they couldn't release a depth chart this week. And I got up to 23 players, and I may have missed somebody, but I had 23 players who took defensive snaps in the first half. I think there was something like 9 defensive linemen who played in the first quarter. Like, they weren't kidding about their depth and the fact that they're going to play depth. And sometimes it was only guys like Alex Sanford came in for like 1 snap. There were guys who were just kind of in and out, but they played a lot of guys. They got guys on the field for snaps that they can use for evaluation later. But it also sounds like they are playing. The depth will be one of the strengths of this team on defense. They want to use the depth as a weapon of sorts, and being able to keep the guys who are their starters, who are the best players, keep them a little bit more fresh for when they will need them in the second half of games. They obviously didn't in this game, but I think that will be an asset if they can continue that. And Barry Odom said he thinks they will. He attributed playing that number of players to just that's how many players they felt were game ready. Now, you play more players on defense and offense usually. You're not cycling in offensive linemen and quarterbacks. You're going to play more on defense regardless. I still thought that was to see that come to fruition, and more than just the numbers. Like, Crew Wakely came in, and as soon as he came in, almost got a pick and then just blasted a guy back to the Stone Age. You had that blitz that Smiley Bradford came on from the nickel that forced a sack. You had Breon Ishmael came in. I think the very first snap he played, he got a TFL. Like, there were guys coming in the first half of this game and making plays. It wasn't just substitutions for the sake of it.
No, and sometimes in these types of games, that's what you're doing, and you're still trying to figure things out. It seems like Purdue has some things figured out, and as Barry Odom said, as long as that many guys can show me that they can go in the games and produce, this team will play that many players. There was a lot of guys that throughout camp we've been told there's very little separation in the secondary. I think linebackers are pretty solidified, but Sanders Ellis came in and made some plays. Like you said, Alex Sanford came in and made some plays. And then, I think that even at one point, CJ Nunley was playing defensive tackle. He's a guy that was a successful defensive end. I thought was going to come here and be a big-time defensive end, and they've gone with Trey Smith and CJ Madden kind of exclusively as the first two guys in those roles. So you find other ways to use these guys if they're talented enough. And Purdue did a great job of that to complement what was a very good start for the offense.
I'm watching this defense today, and Crew Wakely was the one that I already kind of had this vibe, but it really stood out to me today. I'm like, that guy could play at other Big Ten schools. And that seems like such a low bar. But how many times did we watch this defense last year and think they've got backups who could help other Big Ten teams? Like none. And there were some injuries that factored into that at certain positions. But this year and what this team looks like it could be defensively, I mean, they're going to face much tougher tests than this. Ball State was one-dimensional, and that dimension that it had was fairly thin. But I don't expect them to be able to replicate this. I don't know if they may post a shutout next week against Southern Illinois, but I don't know that they'll be able to replicate that sort of low scoring throughout the season. But I think this defense can be a reason why this team wins games. I was talking to Hodori Hines about that the other day. By the way, he did start today. He and Taj Rael were like the last two starters who came off the field. Again, normal for their position somewhat, but like Tony Grimes was getting subbed out before Hodori Hines did in this game. It's so veteran, but then also you see guys getting on the field who will be here for 2 or 3 years. And that kind of combination of things is maybe the most intriguing thing, the most intriguing trend that you're seeing from the Purdue defense right now.
Yeah, I wrote the other day in a bold takes type thing, so take it for what you will. It's meant to be bold and outlandish, but I said Purdue's defense would be the surprise of the Big Ten, because not to say they're going to be lights out, but where Purdue's defense was a year ago, which was probably the worst in all of college football, to now where, I don't look at this defense and think there's guys that are All-Americans or first or second round NFL draft picks, but I think collectively the depth and the experience that this team has can lend itself to being very good. Now, Ball State couldn't throw the ball. It was a one-dimensional offense that wanted to run, and that's kind of Purdue's strength defensively. Yeah. And Purdue shut that down for the most part. So credit there. We're, kind of doing what you're supposed to, but there's a lot of things that we think until we see it in games. You can't say for sure, and, still not there. But I think that there were massive steps in the right direction to kind of lend to what we maybe believe that.
I probably hear that. Hold on a second. I went over to check. You see, supposedly we're supposed to be able to get comments, and I haven't seen it. There's this little duck here that says people can leave us comments. So if you're watching and you want to leave a comment, please do. But I was checking our YouTube feed. I'm getting a little in the weeds here. Anyway, back to the show. Yeah. I mean, I think that, I thought this was a little bit of proof of concept on the defense that you saw. I think Mike Shearer not calling a complicated game, not getting himself into too much trouble, dialed up some pressure at the right moments. I thought they came out on the first snap of the game with a very aggressive look, just things like that. I thought trended in a good direction. I do think that it's not nitpicking to say this run defense needed to be a little bit better. They gave up, I think, 5 explosive runs over in the second and third quarters. Barry Odom came in today and said he thought that tackling was average at best. And it was another refreshing thing to hear after the game was that, nobody came in from this, especially Barry Odom, happy that they won, but not certainly satisfied with the performance. That they know that it has to ratchet up they play USC in 2 weeks and Notre Dame in 3. It's got to be at a higher level.
Purdue whiffed on back-to-back sacks that instead of, taking a team in the punt formation, the quarterback escapes twice in a row, ends up leading to, I think, a 44-yard field goal attempt to hit off the upright. But you've got to make those plays, especially when you're playing USC 2 weeks down the road, Notre Dame the week after that. You've got to capitalize on every opportunity you get to take a shot on the quarterback and take him down. And, Kyle Kelly is a mobile guy, but he's not going to be the best quarterback by any means, or most mobile quarterback that Purdue will see this season. So, yes, it was a great performance defensively to get the shutout, to do a lot of great things, but there is stuff to clean up. And I think the biggest thing is maybe different than a year ago at this point where Purdue was coming off a 49-0 win. The Boilermakers know they did not play up to their standards for a complete 4 quarters.
Yeah, I mean, Barry Odom's really been preaching the process, but I think an important part of the process is belief and buy-in. And everybody talks about how everybody's bought into things. I mean, we're probably talking about that stuff going into last year. And then once you get smacked in the mouth, who still believes? And there's probably a smack in the mouth coming at some point this season for this team of some kind. But I asked CJ Madden, and I carefully not to say, hey, you were here last year when you guys couldn't lead a game to save your lives. What was it like the way this game started? They go touchdown, 3 and out, touchdown. Like, what does that do for a defense? Like, how you kind of and he responded that like there's an energy that you get to play with. I think he said something along the lines of you get to just go out and play loose. You get to just go out and play football. You're not tightening up.
Right.
You've got this lead at your back, and you've seen the performance that your performance has been rewarded. That was happening sometimes last year with this defense, where it would hang in games early and it would limit opponents early, and the offense could do nothing with it. Like, it was just a catastrophe, as you all well know. And to see, I think today, like, again, proof of concept, touchdown, 3 and out. It was Adoree Hines, by the way, making kind of an open field tackle to force that 3 and out in his first career start. And then another touchdown right after that. They scored 2 touchdowns in 9 plays. And I know it's Ball State, but like being up 14-0, and then no, they didn't do everything they wanted to do after that. They could have opened it up even more, but controlling a game from start to finish. I don't want to say it's about baby steps, because this is a whole new program and they flip things over so much. But I do think it's important to look at it in the context of like first, planting your flag a little bit, like first footstep on this road of this season was a secure one.
Yeah, and I said the other day, one of the things that I was most intrigued to see was the receiving core. And we've been told Michael Jackson's a good receiver. He went out and had a pretty good game, had a nice little dance on a touchdown that he had promised weeks ago. And then Armand Branch was the guy that a lot of people early in camp were talking about, like, this guy he's a breakout player. And he had 101 yards receiving on 3 catches in the first quarter, and namely the one where he had a defensive back draped all over him, and he caught it with one arm on the sideline. That was going to be a pass interference anyway, but he went ahead and completed the play. Was spectacular. So I thought that those guys lived up to kind of the hype, at least so far, that we'd heard about them in camp. And most important thing I wanted to see, obviously, was the quarterback play, because it was kept a secret who was going to be the starter, or maybe Purdue just didn't really know until a week ago, which I highly doubt. But Ryan Brown has started 2 games before, been on the losing end, even though he played extremely well at Illinois last year. A couple years ago, he played significantly against Northwestern and ended up Purdue losing that game, I think 23-15. But again, did some nice things. I thought it was huge for him to come out, hit a big play right from the get-go, get some confidence. And then I had asked him after the game, what's different when you go into a season as the number 1 quarterback versus kind of, I guess, waiting for the guy ahead of you to get hurt or not play well to get your opportunity. He said, nothing. I've always prepared like I was going to play no matter what. And that's what you want a quarterback to say. But then he said, the thing about going into a season in week 1 being the starter, the guys around you are a little different. They act a little different. They know you're the man on campus. And I thought guys stepped up for him today and made him look very good. And he did play very well on top of that.
I mean, to me, that goes back again to that concept of the proof of concept and the belief and the buy-in and all that stuff. Like, if he had come in today and scuffled or something and had turnover issues, whatever, and although I think he could have, if this was a game against a Big Ten opponent, there were definitely a couple throws I think he wants back. But if that had happened, even if they win this game, now you've got that kind of in the back of your mind. I mean, I think he came in and did basically everything he needed to do. And I'm not surprised that the way this game started, the big connection between him and Armand Branch. I think the first 4
they went
pass attempts, first 4 pass attempts of the game were PI on the first snap of the game over the middle to Branch. The 49-yard touchdown where he was had to avoid the ankle tackle and spin off a guy, a 17-yard completion, so another explosive play, and then that 35-yard completion down the sideline that you're talking about, like just getting chunk plays with, and that's with a guy that, frankly, all the media, what little media there is that comes out about Purdue football, we'd all been talking about Armand Branch. So it's not like Ball State should have been surprised that Armand Branch had a big game and was targeted in an important way in this game. But also Purdue didn't really know what Ball State had to some extent. Like, it's a whole new team. It's a whole new coaching staff. And that, to me, I asked Barry Odom about that connection at the start of the game. And I think kind of the answer he got around to was that it wasn't so much about a matchup that you were seeking. It's like who do you have belief in on your team? Who do you know you can go to? Who do you have that sort of faith and trust in? And I think Armand Branch had built that both with the team and with Ryan Brown. But I also think you're right. Like, because I was asking some of the same questions, and Manny Powell gave a great answer, because he was the one guy up on the dais today who had never played with Ryan Brown until he got here at the end of the spring. He transfers in, he's around all these other quarterbacks who are fighting for a job. And then all of a sudden this guy jumps back in at the end of the spring. Like, what do you make of that? And he gave a great answer about, going, having some tough times in summer workouts and hearing Ryan Brown's voice and the way that he was kind of lifting everybody through those moments. And even as a defensive player, lifting him up. I just thought that was a really important thing to hear. I think if you're a Purdue fan, that's the kind of thing that the performance on the field still has to be good, but don't underestimate what that means. That for some of these games that are going to be decided in the margin, like the belief in the quarterback and then his responsibility, I think he then feels to lift the team. I don't think you can understate that.
Yeah, very much so. And he's one of the guys, there's not a lot of them who were around last year. I asked Barry Odom if there was kind of not like a weight lifted, but you feel pressure when you're taking over a program that was 1-11. You want to get this thing rolling, and you want to get the fan base on board with you. And Purdue turned out today. It was 55,000 fans in attendance, and it looked pretty packed by the middle of the first quarter. Those stands were pretty full. You want to go out and put out a good performance. Now, whether or not you feel like you owe it to the fans or whatever from what happened last year, I don't know. But I assure you that Ryan Brown, who was around this thing last year, Armand Branch, CJ Madden, I talked to recently, just wrote a story this week about how he has a massive chip on his shoulder because he left a powerhouse program where he won a national championship as a player to come to Purdue to get a better opportunity and also to win a lot of games. And he comes here, plays pretty well for 3 games, but gets hurt and is sitting back watching a 1-11 season. So those guys who were here last year, they wanted to atone, I'm sure, for what happened in the past. And, this is just one game, but it looked and felt different than 2024 from the very get-go.
Not a great day for the rushing game. I thought very adequate. I expected them maybe to be able to impose their will a little bit more. And not a very good game from a third down efficiency perspective, kind of borderline, 4 of 11 there. And, how much of it is nitpicking? How much of that is like a real thing that has to get addressed for the next 2 weeks? I think it's more the latter. I think that, teams have to respect both sides of the ball offensively for Purdue. The offense, the passing game, like kind of made its first statement. Maybe that will help the running game then in turn make its statement. And they're going to have to be an efficient team on third down. Like you can get explosive plays against the Ball States of the world much easier. You can get them against the USCs and Notre Dames and all the other teams that are going to come soon. And there's going to be times where you have to like methodically drive. They did have one, I thought, really good drive. It wasn't good that they got stuffed on third down, but then to come back on fourth down, keep it on the ground, and Mockabee goes for the 4-yard touchdown run. I consider that sort of a positive exchange. So there were positive moments for the run game, just not like a sustained kind of grind that you might have expected. So any individual performances for you before we wrap up that really stood out?
Not really.
Besides Armand Branch and Ryan Brown, those first couple possessions.
Yeah, I think you should pinpoint that, a lot's been made of James Shebist and how great he is in terms of being a special teams coach, and Purdue's certainly paying him like he's the best in the country. So, you hope to see the good side of that. And I thought Jack McAllister is a guy who James Shebist is very high on. I thought he did a great job punting the ball and putting Ball State in some tough situations.
That coffin corner. That was, That was perfect. I'm a big coffin corner proponent, because I'm old. I thought it
Nathan
important
lives for the punting.
I don't live for the punting, but I love to see punting technique. I thought Manny Powell and Charles Correa showed up like we thought they would and were important parts of the front of this defense. They had, like, I think combined for 9 tackles and 1.5 TFLs, something like that. There was a sack in there for Powell, first of his Purdue career. And I was struck actually watching the post game. If you go to IndyStar.com or JCOnline.com, we'll have videos up of the post game. Look at how big Manny Powell's arms are. And I was kind of thinking to myself, like, I don't remember looking at Purdue linebackers last year and thinking that very much. Like, he's a different kind of athlete. He looks like a Big Ten linebacker, and some of the guys they were playing last year did not look like, or certainly play like, Big Ten linebackers. It was a position that had to make a big leap, and it looks like they probably have. I mean, both those guys look like they belonged out there and were kind of setting the tone. They're going to have to do it at a different level in a couple of weeks, I know, but again, talking about where you're starting from, the beginning of things. It was a positive beginning for really that whole defensive front, other than some of the problems they had with tackling in the run game.
Yeah, the one thing I noted on Twitter when Manny Powell got that sack was how fast he got to the quarterback. That's something that Purdue definitely lacked last year at linebacker was the speed. And I think Kadron Jenkins is a really good football player. He wasn't a linebacker in terms of speed last year, getting sideline to sideline. And I think in Manny Powell, you have a guy that can, force a guy to string and run out along the sideline until somebody else can get there and make the tackle, or he can go up and make it himself. He got on the quarterback extremely fast there, and I don't think that Kyle Kelly knew what hit him by the time that Manny Powell closed that hole and waylaid him.
Yeah, I do feel like, I'm not trying to nitpick after a shutout, but I just feel like a week from now, well, more importantly, like 9 days from now, we're going to be having a lot of conversations with Barry Odom and Mike Scherer about, okay, well, what from these first 2 games give you the confidence that you can actually stop USC with Lincoln Riley, who, by the way, probably has some ideas of how to stop your offensive coordinator, because he used to be his offensive coordinator, and Notre Dame and the things that they can do, especially sometimes on the ground, like they typically fairly solid there. Like, they're going to have some questions to answer. And I as we talked about on the season preview, like, I feel like this is stages. So, like, you come in and you play well in these first 2 games and win them. And then, like, the next stage starts, but it's that middle stage. Like, where are you coming out of the Illinois game for Purdue and going into Minnesota and Northwestern and Rutgers? Like, where can you get by that early midpoint of the season to maybe, like, take your bite at that point? I still think, as I'm kind of scrutinizing this team, I'm still taking a kind of a wider view. Every win has value, but it's more, what does the performance telling me about where they might be at that time of the year?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Like, Purdue should go out and beat a MAC team. If you're in the Big Ten and you play a MAC team that you paid, Purdue paid $1.2 million for this game, I believe. You should win 31-0 at least. And so Purdue did what it's supposed to do, or what it's expected to do. But what do you do when you're the underdog, or in 2 weeks when you're playing USC and you're facing guys who are 4-star caliber players and future NFL players, which is something that Ball State and Southern Illinois, quite frankly, probably don't have a lot of, if any. So it's nice to kind of take these stepping stones, I guess, into the season where Purdue should be 2-0, I would think, 2 weeks down the line. But as of right now, took care of business, did what you're supposed to do, got a shutout. Everybody's happy tonight, but I think the biggest thing is that the players and coaches know that this wasn't a perfect performance by any means, and has to be much better, next week and then the week after, and then, ultimately at your best 3 months from now.
There's going to be some clunk. You start off with some clunk. That's what the first game is about. And Ball State will potentially be better by the end of the season than they were today, again, with the new coaching staff and a bunch of new players. But that kind of struck me today. It's like, Ryan Brown, as good as that passing game looked at times today, it's still relatively recent that he's been gelling with some of those guys. I know they've had the summer and preseason camp, but compared to guys who've maybe been playing together for a couple of years, like, they do still have some ground to make up just on that connection and that chemistry and and how in sync they are. But I think that can keep growing. I think that's maybe the thing that you come out of this game. I don't think you look at almost any take away the score and the result, but just look at the performance of like each group. And I don't think you think, well, that's never going to happen again. They can't possibly replicate that, right? Like 103 yards on 3 catches or whatever in the first 2 possessions of the game, something like that is a little bit of an anomaly. But like, I think you look at every phase of this game and think they can replicate that, or more importantly, when they have to, and they will have to, they can be better than that. Like this, we haven't seen the upside of any of these groups.
Right. Yeah. There was a play in the game that, now that I think about it, stands out when you mentioned Brian Brown would like to have some throws back. EJ Horton was the only guy on that side of the play, I think, at one point, and it should have been a walk-in touchdown, and he gets overthrown. There are things that you have to clean up, obviously, a little bit, and, again, that's nitpicking, but in these games that are going to be more contested, you have to make that play. Whether it's on the receiver or the quarterback, you have to be more in sync. And there was another time early in the game where I think Ryan Brown had bounced the ball to Ahmad Branch, and he kind of came up a little frustrated and was saying like, hey, you didn't see what I was trying to do here, or something like that, where you start to freestyle a little bit when the quarterback scrambles, which is something Ryan Brown is going to do, I imagine, quite a bit over the course of the season. So
did it for a touchdown today.
Right. This will be it's far from a finished product. It's going to be a thing that's each week. You'll probably see a little bit of progressions here and there, but there's going to be times where that has to be elevated or escalated kind of in overdrive, because the caliber of competition is going to ramp up here pretty quickly.
We will wrap it up there. Thanks for joining us here on Boilers Extra. We will be with you again midweek, talking about the Southern Illinois game and probably a number of other things. But we'll be here after every game all season long. So thanks for joining us, and hope you come back.